My two least favorite jokes that people tell. You're on an elevator, a few people press a few floors, and then what does somebody say? Oh, I guess this is the local. And then when you guys show up in hats and somebody would say, well, I guess Mark didn't get the memo. We were supposed to wear baseball caps today. Hate those jokes, never tell them. Have a kind of unbridled hostility towards anyone who would. So be warned, if you're on an elevator with me and a couple buttons are pressed, don't reference the local. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning meeting. I'm Mark Halpern. Two great guests with us today. Sons of the South. We're back to the theme. And again, remember, I was born south of the Mason-Dixon line, or grew up south of the Mason-Dixon line. So I, too, am a son of the South, prefer grits to caviar. Homan Moore is here. Hogan Gidley, gentlemen, welcome and thank you for being here.
Hey, Mark, good to see you.
This program, based on the Network News Division's morning meetings, will run through the day book in a moment. And Hogan and Haima will explain it all. We're going to talk a lot about Donald Trump today. And Hogan Gidley knows Donald Trump as well as he knows the back of his hand. Hogan, close your eyes. What does the back of your hand look like?
Like
See,
Donald
people,
Trump.
see, it's a cliche. People don't really have a full command. I'll tell you who knows a lot about the back of his hand is Donald Trump, because he's got the most scrutinized back of a hand of anybody in America. And then time for your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform and you want to get in on the conversation, raise your hand. We've had lots of new people on the program as viewers this week. I know because I look at all the data. I'm metrics obsessed. I'm like Ken Melman or the guy who ran the Oakland A's during Billy Ball, obsessed with it. But your new people aren't raising your hands. It's fun and easy. Just raise your electronic hand. If you get called on, make a comment, make a question, ask Hogan why it is Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays, anything you want, and you'll get your answer. So please raise your hand if you're here on the platform, if you're watching on X or on YouTube. I would just ask one simple request, no smack in the chat. It's as simple as that. Thank you for your attention to that matter. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a day. It's going to be a day because the President of the United States is going to Iowa. He's going to Iowa to give a speech on affordability, which is supposed to take place at around 3 o'clock. Central time, 4 o'clock Eastern. If he starts on time, that'll be a great tee up for two-way tonight, airing in new time, 5 Eastern time. If he starts late, as he probably will, it'll screw up my broadcast. So, dear Susie Wiles, let's try to stay on schedule. It's the president's only public event, although he's doing a tour of a local business, which I suspect will have some pool coverage. And of course, he could talk on departure from the White House, on arrival or departure at Andrews, on arrival in Iowa. Lots of opportunities for the president to speak to the press. Who's in the out-of-town travel pool, you ask? Number one, please. USA Today is the print pool. Wonder if that's Susan Page. Does she still cover the White House? I don't know. Secondary print pool, Bloomberg. NPR, radio pool. Gray TV, secondary TV, and arguably the president's favorite television news network, ABC News, is the travel pool today. So he'll get to insult someone from ABC. Don't know what the vice president's up to. House remains out, playing chicken with the House of Lords. They say they're not coming back, so the Senate better not make any changes in the previously House-passed bill funding the Department of Homeland Security. And the Senate continues to work through that. We'll talk about that in a moment. In Maryland, the House Rules Committee is meeting to talk about congressional redistricting as the Senate president, a Democrat, continues to say he's not interested in redistricting. He wants to focus on affordability. It's an interesting plot because the Democrats are trying to pick up one House seat in Maryland. The Fed kicks off its two-day meeting. Tomorrow's the day, Wednesday, when the chair has his press conference. NTSB at this hour holding a hearing about that horrible helicopter crash over the Potomac. California State Court is hearing a landmark case with parents, teachers, and students saying TikTok, Meta, and YouTube deliberately engineered their platforms to be addictive and harmful to minors. It is an extraordinary case where some of the leading figures in social media are expected to testify. We will be covering that and watching that closely. And the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom heads to Beijing to meet with Premier Xi, one of many American allies who are flirting with the Chinese. And after the meeting, he'll be hungry in 2 hours. But Hogan doesn't even get that because that's before his time. You don't know what that joke, but it's a joke that everyone on this meeting older than 60 knows very well. Jack, am I right? You got that joke? Of course you did. Yes, he did. All right. I don't know. Back in the olden days, there was this thing that if you ate Chinese food, you were hungry again in 2 hours.
I don't know.
I don't know why that's a thing, because when I eat Chinese food in 2 hours, I feel like throwing up. I'm not hungry again. Too heavy. I love Chinese food too, but it's basically gluten. It's just a bunch of gluten, Chinese food. Anyway, that's what's.
It's the Jay Leno joke. I don't know what gluten is, but it must be delicious because everything I've tried that doesn't have it is horrible.
Is that a Jay Leno joke?
I think he said that one time on his show. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a funny joke. I'm
Well,
gonna have to. I'm gonna have to
someone should
find
have
that
given
on
him
you.
a show.
Someone find they or several. Someone find that on YouTube and put it in the chat. A quick word from a sponsor, and then we're going to dig right in. Cozy Earth, right now. I'm embarrassed to say, ladies and gentlemen, you probably were mocking me yesterday when I was talking about the BOGO pajamas. The pajamas are not called BOGO. BOGO, buy one get one free. The bamboo pajamas are now available. Buy one get one free to members of this community. Go to twoway.com. Promo code is 2WMM BOGO. You get two pairs of pajamas, a pajama set for one low price. Buy them for Valentine's Day, matching hers and hers, or hers and hers, or his and hers, or hers and hers, whatever you want. The pajama set sold out over Christmas, but it's available now. Special Valentine's season offer. Buy one, get one free of the pajama set. Classic Cozy Earth favorite. Upgrade your sleepwear for you and someone you love, or maybe buy two for yourself. Really, it's none of my business what you do, but I do recommend you buy them. Go to cozyearth.com. And again, the extraordinary promo code. If you can remember this promo code, you should get three pairs. 2WMM BOGO for the pajamas, and while you're on there, buy anything else you want. All right, gentlemen, extraordinary turn of events. The President of the United States has just completely refashioned his policy towards the great state of Minnesota. Conversations yesterday with the mayor and the governor, the dispatch of Mr. Homan, and then last night, according to the New York Times, this is number 114, an extraordinary 2-hour meeting in the Oval Office with a guy named Lewandowski, a lady named Noem. Susie Wiles was there, the Times says, and Stephen Miller was not. Not clear what happened in that private meeting, but the Atlantic magazine is reporting that the head of the Border Patrol is out, and Noem and Lewandowski may be too. Do you guys know this Nick Mitoff? You guys ever heard of Nick Mitoff of the Atlantic? I confess I've never heard of him either. I wonder why he'd be the only reporter well-sourced enough to know that these three people may be losing their jobs. But he's the only one reporting it, but lots of people are repeating it in the media. And Homans is supposed to be meeting with the mayor today, and I suspect the governor too. And some Border Patrol are leaving the state. Maybe some ICE are leaving the state. Hogan, what happens next in Minnesota? Where is this headed?
Oh, I don't know where it's headed, Mark. I just think what we've seen transpire really kind of has helped shape what they're doing now and trying to figure out the path moving forward. It's obvious that people are violating the law in Minnesota. And when you do that, bad things happen. These people have been shot and killed in tragic ways. And I think the administration is trying to grapple with not just the actual implementation of federal law that already exists on the books, but also the PR of the whole thing. And you'll recall in 2020, in the Summer of Love, when Minnesota burnt down its entire state, basically, this kind of thing went on to dog the administration in a lot of ways, a lot of fights over that. So I think they're trying to avoid that, get out ahead of it as best they can, and maybe make some shakeups. Not necessarily with cabinet people, because I don't think that happens here, but I do think with some implementations on the ground, some hierarchies on the ground that can actually make these calls. And someone like Homan, who's a friend of mine, I've known for a while, I think is incredible at his job. And because he has worked across several administrations, of course, now famously the video and the pictures of Barack Obama giving him an award for deportations, I think that kind of works to kind of bring some folks together and go, this guy has a handle on it. Let's put him over there.
Hogan, just real quick, did I understand you to suggest that Mr. Preddy had committed a crime?
I'm sorry?
Did you mean to suggest that Alex Preddy, the man who was killed on Saturday, committed a crime? Or you were not?
I don't know if he committed a crime or not. I know he was impeding law enforcement. I know he was violently resisting arrest, which are also crimes.
Okay. Okay.
Doesn't mean he should be shot, by the way. I don't know.
Understood.
I don't know all that. I'm just saying, like,
Understood. I'm not sure he committed a crime. At least I'm not sure what crime he committed.
Well, resisting arrest is a crime.
Well, did they try to arrest him, and did he resist it? I don't see that. I don't see that.
I've seen a lot of people
on the video.
I've seen a lot of people get confronted by law enforcement who just put their hands behind their back and move on. Famously, AOC did it fake, but still.
Well, he tried to walk away,
rolling all around the ground, fighting and scratching and clawing. I don't know what you call that.
I say this with respect to Hogan. It sounds like he's more from the Corey Lewandowski, Kristi Noem school.
Yeah, look at that.
Look at that.
He,
Spit
he, may,
take.
he may disagree. Look,
Haima, what do you think happens next in Minnesota? What does the governor do? What does the mayor do? Does the kumbaya continue? Or in other words, are we on a glide path towards more cooperation and reconciliation, or do you expect this to get rocky again?
No, look, I don't think we're at a kumbaya at all right now. I think things are going to get a lot worse. Here's the reality. As much as President Donald Trump would like to PR his way into a better story around this, if the President of the United States of America and his administration had gone into the state with some sort of level of collaboration and gone in to actually move the needle on one, lowering illegal immigration, two, making the city and the state safer. And to Hogan's point, the whole state did not burn down. There were certain blocks in Minnesota that were burned down after a black man was killed for no good reason. And so all this propaganda that we are spewing about Minnesota and Minneapolis is all wrapped in miscommunication, is wrapped in the governor and the mayor and the president not collaborating, is wrapped in misinformation, is wrapped in a whole bunch of people coming to Minnesota trying to cause trouble who don't live there. And so all of this crap has got to stop. And so I hope President Trump and Kristi Noem and all the other people, hold on, Hogan, I'm not done. All these other people who are going to these other states, I hope that they first call the governor and say, hey, what do you need help with? Hey, can you get your mayor on the phone? Hey, can you get your local PD on the phone? I'm not even sure that these ICE officers are on the same radio frequency as local PD, state PD. And so I don't care about what happened yesterday. None of that was good. All of this should have happened months ago, before 2 people were killed, before 3 people were shot, before this city was thrown into a huge frying pan. And so it seems as if the president would like for this to continue to happen so he can have his Insurrection Act and he can say that people are being unlawful. This is disgusting.
Okay. Now, let me say a few things. Hogan, go ahead, and then I'll jump
Yeah,
back.
first of all, I don't think the president wants to do the Insurrection Act. I think he talks about it, but as you know, on the global
Well, he
stage,
should stop talking about it. He's talking about it every day. He's
he
threatening
talks
the
about
American
it. I'm
people.
saying I don't think he
I don't want to
wants
be threatened by my president. I do not at all.
I don't think he wants to do that. Second of all, it's interesting because as we talk about this writ large, this whole effort to deport criminals, Texas, Arizona, Florida, deporting way more people than Minnesota even thought about doing. Blue cities like Memphis, Austin,
Hogan,
lots
that's not a
of
badge of honor.
I know. Hold on. There aren't killings.
Like,
There aren't protests. So to pretend as though the folks in Minnesota were saying, we just want to work with the administration. They didn't. That's why we are where we are, is because they wouldn't let the federal government come in and implement law that has already been passed and signed by both Republican and Democrat Congress and Republican and Democrat presidents. They won't work with them. All these other
Hogan,
states
what's
happening,
the president's
and there
end
are
goal here?
no instances like this at all.
What's the president's end goal here? Is he getting out criminals, or is he trying to deport as many people as possible? What's his end goal here? What are we trying to accomplish? What's the plan for immigration? You don't get, because you're the president, you don't get carte blanche to go into an American city, a sovereign city, and take over because you feel like they are harboring people who have been there for 40,
All right,
50
guys,
years.
guys,
What's the
guys,
plan?
guys,
What's the plan, Hogan? What's the plan?
I got to stop you just because we got a lot of hands up and a lot to get to. I appreciate the conversation, and I think you both got to say your piece. Couple things. The Atlantic writer Nick Miroff, Noah tells us, used to be at the Washington Post in Latin America, and Noah says very well sourced at the Border Patrol. So maybe he does have this right. And let's talk about that in a moment, Kristi Noem. I'll just remind everybody this platform. If you hear something you don't agree with, don't be angry, learn. Okay? Hogan's representing tens of millions of people in his point of view. Hyman's doing the same thing. And they're both pretty passionate about it, also representative of what a lot of people in the country think. The idea of this platform is for people to be able to share ideas and different points of view and listen and engage rather than fight, and rather than say, I only want to hear things I agree with. I'll say that as often as I need to when I glance at the chat and I see people saying, oh my God, I'll never watch his show again because Hyman said something I didn't like. Folks, that's not what this platform's about. Thank you for your attention to that matter. Kristi Noem, as best I can tell, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't been on TV in the day. And there is speculation about her future at the department. Most people I know who know the president don't think she'll be fired. But Hyma, is she staying or going?
I agree with Hogan on this. I think she stays. I don't think that this, as it stands, and look, we've seen the president, stand behind people he believes in. She's doing what he wants her to do, and she's effective in her job, according to the president. So I don't think she's going anywhere right now.
Okay. Hogan, our friend Trisha, you know Trisha. I know Trisha. She used to be on two-way before the government snatched her away. I haven't seen Trisha on TV either. Are we going to see the secretary and the assistant secretary back on TV? Today's Tuesday, 9:15. When will we see them on TV again?
Oh, I think another day or so. I think once Homan gets there and they have some conversations about how they want to do things and they coordinate with the president and the administration, they'll be back out on television. I think, talking to the American people about what is exactly happening and, that PR battle I mentioned before, so much of this, is won and lost on the airwaves, and Donald Trump knows that better than anybody. And so if he thinks it's not going well on the airwaves, he'll make some decisions on who to put out on television and then who to bring back into the fold or keep off for a while. That's just kind of the way this works.
Right. So the president made a number of decisions yesterday. Homan to Minnesota, seemingly sidelining Noem, Bovino out of Minnesota. Talked to the mayor and the governor and posted very conciliatory tweets, Truth Social posts about those conversations. That's a lot of change in one day. Okay. Some of us saw this coming over the weekend. I'll be talking about this on Next Up at great length, but I want to show you two things that happened, one yesterday and one today, that I believe explain, at least in part, why the president changed the way he did. Here's two categories of people the president listens to. One is people on Fox News, and one is people he's married to. Here's Brian Kilmeade yesterday from Fox and Friends, repeated reference immediately before, an hour or two before, the president put on Truth Social that he was sending Homan to Minnesota to take over. Here is Secretary of Advice, Brian Kilmeade.
I would hope that maybe a fresh set of eyes, Tom Homan going in there, taking control of this, letting some of the 3,000 move on to other cities that definitely need ICE and Border Patrol to patrol. I would love to see Tom Homan just be asked to go in there and settle things down. He understands the president's objective. He could come in with a fresh set of eyes. But what I would do is just bring Tom Homan in. Tom Homan's been marginalized.
All right, so minutes later, the president puts on Truth Social. Hogan, you know Brian well, you know the president well. Maybe you have specific knowledge about this situation. Did Brian have inside information, or did the president put on Truth Social that he was sending Homan because Brian told him to?
I don't have any information about this.
All right, how do you think that went down? It's kind of a crazy coincidence.
No, I mean, look, I think people on Fox, people at various publications, the New York Times, the Washington Post, are well sourced within the building. And a lot of those sources tend to be the president from time to time.
Okay, let me ask it this way. Sorry to interrupt, but let me ask it this way because I want to move on to the First Lady. Is it possible that the president saw Brian said that and without consulting anybody just made the policy up right on the spot?
It's possible, but not likely.
Okay. Homan, here's another person who has the president's ear. This is the First Lady on Fox and Friends, largely there to promote her film coming out at the end of the week. But here was her message about Minnesota 109.
We need to unify. I'm calling for unity. I know my husband, the president, had a great call yesterday with the governor and the mayor, and they're working together to make it peaceful and without riots. I'm against the violence, so if you protest in peace. And we need to unify in these times.
Mm-hmm. Homan, are you comforted by the fact that the First Lady has that attitude and perhaps is impacting how the president's thinking about Minnesota?
Unfortunately not. I respect the office of the presidency and I respect the First Family, but I don't take any cues from First Lady Melania Trump. So look, I hope she's telling her husband this, and I hope she's having conversations, in the private residence about this. But look, I think she's absolutely right. This is something we've been saying for a long time. I'm so, and I know people in chat are like, oh, Hyman's coming in hot today. I'm so over this conversation. I'm so upset about it to a level that I can almost not even explain. We've been talking about this for months now. I was looking at one of my news clips from last June, and one of the things that I said is, I'm nervous that the president's going to put ICE agents, National Guard, federal agents against local people, against local residents. And that's what's happening right now. If you walk out your door and you feel like you cannot trust a federal agent who's supposed to be there to protect you, and you feel like you're going to incite some sort of violence, you have to protect yourself, that is not the America I want to live in. I don't care what you're trying to accomplish. I don't care if you're trying to deport 100 million illegal immigrants. If I happen to feel unsafe in my own city, my own country, that is a non-starter, you know? And so I praise Melania Trump for having these comments. I praise her for going out and promoting her movie. But if this doesn't start at home, if she's just not having this conversation with her husband, then it's a moot point.
Hogan, if you had a teenage son and he said, and you lived in Minneapolis, and he said, I feel really strongly that this effort to deport people in this city, the way ICE is going about it's wrong. I want to go down there and protest what ICE is doing. What would you tell your son?
I would tell them do not go down there and protest, but if you do, stay out of the way of law enforcement, because turns out, shock of shocks, it is very easy, son, it is very easy, daughter, to not get arrested by federal law enforcement. Don't get in their way. That's all you got to do. You want to go down there and scream and blow your whistles, even though you're doing it at the wrong people. It should be at Congress because they're the ones who make the laws. Fine, do what you got to do. Stay out of the way of law enforcement. Period.
Okay.
You will not get arrested and you will not get shot.
Two political stories deriving out of what's happened in Minneapolis. First, I have never seen, and you can see this if you watch TV, but if you have private conversations, you can hear it in a more intense way. I've never seen either party's senators as fired up as Democratic senators are right now about this. They are outraged. Here's the headline from New York Times 115. Carl Hulse, the New York Times reporter, known by me as the 101st senator. He's been covering Congress for a long time, very familiar with what happens in Congress. Democrats embrace a shutdown fight they wanted to avoid. It is true, up until the incident of this weekend, Democrats did not want to precipitate a partial government shutdown over fighting of funding for the Department of Homeland Security. But now they do, and they've got a long list of things they're demanding get done before they're willing to vote to fund this part of the government. Here is one of many Democratic senators who was on TV in the last day. This is Tammy Duckworth of Illinois on Morning Joe 116, please.
Well, the problem we have is that even in the big, beautiful bill, Trump's big, beautiful bill, they gave ICE and CPB $70 billion slush fund to play with. What we're asking for is for Leader Thune to break out the DHS budget. Let us pass the rest of the bill. Let us pass the rest of the bill, and then let's go to the let's go and sit down and work on putting some restraints on ICE. You know, I have my Police Accountability and Independent Review Act, which says anytime ICE is involved in a shooting, there should be an independent review, transparent. We need to put guardrails around ICE, and that's all Democrats are asking for. So Republicans to be responsible about how ICE operates in our nation's cities, whether that's a blue city or red city.
Is Trish on Fox right now? Is that live?
I don't know.
I think it is. We need to take
she's
that.
on
Let's take that now, please. This is the Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, former two-way mainstay, Tricia McLaughlin.
We have seen on the ground in Minneapolis a highly coordinated campaign of violence against our law enforcement. Your viewers have seen the images. And in this case, we saw an individual who he was armed. He got into a physical altercation with law enforcement. He was in the course of obstructing a federal operation, which is a federal crime. The Department of Homeland Security, we work every day to make sure we're giving the American people swift, accurate information, and so we'll continue to do that as facts are emerging, as things are evolving.
Then are you standing by calling him a domestic terrorist?
Well, we'll let this investigation that Homeland Security investigators are leading, the FBI is supporting, and CBP is doing a separate internal investigation as well, Dana.
Okay, so I guess it stands. Then let me ask you this. Then yesterday there was questions about body cam video during that incident, and have you, I know it's only been about 12 hours since that briefing, but do you have any updated information on whether the department will release that body cam video?
I don't have that information. I have not seen the body cam footage myself. I know that there's at least 4 officers who were on the ground during that incident where they were wearing body cams. So I imagine that will be released at some point, but I don't have more information on it. But I do want to say, Dana, that this is an absolute tragedy, and I pray every morning and every night for Alex Preddy and his family. this was completely preventable, and we never want to see a loss of life. And it is a reminder that when you do obstruct lawful operations, especially if you're armed, it's dangerous and it can be deadly. You have the right to practice your First Amendment, of course, and your Second Amendment rights, but do so responsibly and without breaking federal law.
Thank you for that. I want to ask you about this too, because I think the American people are frustrated in terms of all the different types of information. Nobody trusts anybody, et cetera. But it does seem like that all of us should be able to agree on numbers. And
okay, we'll monitor it.
Last week you told us,
interesting to me that she's back on TV.
1,
Hogan, I agreed with Hogan. I didn't think Trish or the secretary would be on today. And although Dana interpreted her failure to address the secretary's previous characterization of Mr. Preddy, and Dana said, well, the previous characterization stands. To me, most of that was backing down in tone. Do you guys agree that reflects backing down in tone from the secretary and her normal posture, or no?
I feel like it was a sort of they think they're saying the same thing. They're just sort of reframing it and saying it a little softer and a little nicer. The only thing they're backing on, they're not calling him a domestic terrorist, which I think is appropriate to not say right now. There's a lot of investigation that has to happen. I appreciate that she said that they want to get information as quickly and as accurately as possible. So I thought it was from what we heard, a pretty tame interview.
Yeah.
I mean, Hogan,
Okay. Hogan,
No, I don't disagree. I think too, these things often turn into Rorschach tests, political Rorschach tests, meaning one side sees it and goes, these people are domestic terrorists. Another side sees it and says the law enforcement are just murderers. There's never like a, hey, hold on one second. And I think that's one of the things Homan brings to this as well. And one of the reasons he's going to Minneapolis in the first place is because from the outset, he's like, look, we'll do an investigation. We'll figure out what happened here. But at the same time, you cannot go out there and impede law enforcement. That's against the law. And goes to his information there for the public. I think it's a better tone to take for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's one of the. Go ahead, Mark. That's one of the reasons why I want the president to articulate what he's trying to accomplish. Just be honest with us. You guys know I talk about this all the time. I'm from New Orleans, and one of the things that I always say, particularly the National Guard, New Orleans, South Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, these states would not stand without the support and help of the National Guard every year, who come and help us prepare for hurricanes, help us, recovery, search and rescue. And so there's a huge swath of people in this country who already have an innate baked in trust with National Guard and national troops. I think the issue is they do not trust that the president's sending these individuals to their states for the right reason. And I think that's the question we've got to answer. What are we trying to accomplish?
We got to cover a bunch of stuff. We're going to do it quick, then we're going to go to questions because a lot of hands up. We're starting about the shutdown. We shut Duckworth. It seems to me either the Republicans in the White House are going to have to give Democrats something on the Department of Homeland Security, or there's going to be a shutdown. I don't think Democrats are going to just vote for the bill without getting something. Will there be, for more than just the weekend, will there be a sustained government shutdown or not? Just yes or no. Hogan?
No.
Haima?
Yes.
Okay. I say no because I think the White House is going to provide them a fair amount of give on this, I believe. So. Minnesota 26. Amy Klobuchar has delayed announcing her campaign for governor, only a delay. She still plans to run. 2 months ago, or maybe it was a month ago, but it's a month ago, it looked like Democrats had a chance to lose Senate races and Senate races and gubernatorial races in Minnesota because of the controversy, scandal over welfare. That's obviously still something Republicans are going to try to run on. But my sense of things, as where we sit right now, is this is going to energize the base of the Democratic Party so much that Klobuchar and whoever the Democratic nominee for Senate are now locks. Haima, do you agree as of now that the immigration controversy and energy is going to trump controversy over the welfare fraud story?
I'm not. I think so, but I'm not sure. Because look, we talked about there's something there's something going on with that we've got to figure out. What happened, and I think Amy Klobuchar, who I just adore, is the right candidate to step up, and she's a no nonsense, no BS sort of person. and she's kind of a school, a choir girl. So she's not going to come in and endorse the continuation of this fraud. If anything, if I was doing fraud in Minnesota, I would be afraid of Amy Klobuchar coming in as governor, because she's going to lay the hammer down.
Yeah. Hogan, do you agree with me that your candidates are too weak to overcome the energy over all of this?
Well, first of all, ask her staff if she's a choir girl. Speaking of putting the hammer down,
let's discuss that. Let's discuss that over salads.
But yes, with hairbrushes. But I don't think so, Mark. I think how many lifetimes are there between now and November?
I understand.
It's a while.
It could change again.
I feel like there could be a sea change here for a whole host of reasons. I think the tide turns on this legal immigration thing, but also the fraud stuff is pretty big.
Yeah.
And I think it really does make people angry.
It does.
These little small subsets in the Minneapolis area now, the people out there yelling or whatever they're doing. I don't know that that's a representation writ large across the state of people who are fed up with a lot of different things.
I think the Democratic. Go ahead, Homan.
And look, we've said this too. And some of those folk who are out there, protesting, we know they're not from Minnesota, and so they don't necessarily represent the mood of what's happening in Minnesota. I have a lot of friends there right now. You look in the suburbs and in these purple areas. There is a lot of consideration for this, and I think what's happening right now is, all the things on the ground are starting to muddy the waters, and they're having to kind of think about the way they vote a little differently than they would have if it was just the fraud, if it was just the the governor stepping down, just the mayor getting reelected. But there's a lot of things for them to consider right now. And I think to Hogan's point, not all of these people are from Minnesota. Not all of these people who are out there right now represent the mood.
I think the Democrats are going to raise so much money off of this for the Minnesota races that they're going to be very hard to beat in what has become a pretty blue state. Okay, presidents in Iowa today, as we said. There are lots of other stories in the world. There's a lot going on with China. There's a lot going on in the Middle East. There's a lot going on in Iran, where I think it's increasingly likely, or at least still likely, that the president will engage in a military attack against Iran. Lots to discuss. But we're going to go to your questions in a moment, and we'll stick on this topic because I know the community is super engaged, and I continue to believe the conversations we have here about Minnesota are like no other and important to have. I do want to play you one thing. This is Mark Rutte, the head of NATO. Must be a lonely man as he travels around Europe, because he seems to understand the actual balance of power between the United States and NATO better than most of the people who live in Europe, at least amongst the intellectuals. This is Mark Rutte explaining what's what to his fellow NATO members about just how interconnected they are with Donald Trump and the United States.
So when President Trump is doing good stuff, I will praise him. And I don't mind him publishing text messages. And if anyone thinks here, again, that the European Union or Europe as a whole can defend itself without the US, keep on dreaming. You can't. We can't. We need each other. And why do we need each other? I tell you. First of all, because also the US needs NATO. For the US to stay safe, and by the way, Arctic region is evidence here, they need a secure Arctic, they need a secure Euro-Atlantic, and they also need a secure Europe. So the US has every interest in NATO as much as Canada and the European NATO allies. But for Europe, if you really want to go it alone, and those of you who are planning for that, forget that you can ever get there with 5%. It will be 10%. You have to build up your own nuclear capability. That costs billions and billions of euros. You will lose then, in that scenario, you would lose the ultimate guarantor of our freedom, which is the US nuclear umbrella. Good luck.
Haima, is that view the view that's going to pervade, that the United States, despite the tensions over Greenland and other things, that in fact Rutte will be right and they'll be NATO and Trump will stay together, or is he an outlier?
I agree with him, but I don't think the president's going to care what he said one bit, and I don't think he's taking any signals from this meeting or from this rhetoric. I thought it was logically laid out, but it seems like it's somewhat of a veiled threat, and I think the president is probably not going to take that lightly. And so I think the European relationship.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't take what he's saying as a threat. I take what he's saying as an endorsement of Trump's point of view.
Well, I think it's both. I think it's if President Trump doesn't continue to move forward relationship with Europe, America is going to be in a more dangerous place. Yeah. And so I think if I were the president, I would take it that way. But I agree with him. I hope that the president is going to continue down the road of continuing our relationship with Europe in a productive manner. But I don't know. I think for the next couple of years, and to Hogan's point earlier, we're a long way to November, but we're even longer away from 2028. And so I think a lot can happen. And if this conversation, if this relationship, I'm sorry, if this conversation around Greenland doesn't continue to progress in a way that the president is going to be that benefits the president, I think he's going to get upset about it.
Hogan, do you know Mr. Root?
I've not met him, no.
Not
I
met
know
him.
the old one,
Do
Stoltenberg.
yeah. Do you think he's saying what he believes and it's like an intellectual position, or he's just trying to work his politics with the president?
It seems as though he's more doing this out of conviction of personal belief, not trying to kiss up to the president. It seems like he's pretty adamant about this because, quite frankly, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but what it sounds like is it's a recognition of reality, and I think that's kind of a new tact for the EU. Not seeing the world as it is, as opposed to seeing it as they want it to be. And so I think he sees it and he's saying it, and I think this is what he believes.
All right. Word from a sponsor, and then we're going to get to your questions on Minnesota or anything else you want to bring up for Hogan and Haima. Thank you for being here. Stand by. When was the last time you woke up actually feeling rested? For many people, difficulty falling asleep, maybe feelings of stress keep you from getting a good night's sleep. Over 50% of adults say they feel better if they got better sleep and more sleep and felt less stressed. Right now, the folks at CB Distillery will give you 25% off with the promo code 2WMM. CB Distillery products, natural solutions for sleep and stress. Everything from CB Distillery is premium quality, third-party tested, free from artificial dyes and fillers. Over 2 million happy customers have already purchased products from CB Distillery, and now you can too. Right now, 25% off everything they sell. Go to cbdistillery.com. Use the promo code 2WMM. If you want better sleep, this is something that's worked for so many. Give it a try. cbdistillery.com, promo code 2WMM for 25% off the entire site. cbdistillery.com, promo code 2WMM. Thank you for your attention to that matter. Adam Smith, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Hogan and Haima and the ghost of Trish McLaughlin.
Hey, so I'm Adam from San Diego, California. I've been on here once before. Mark,
Yes, sir.
on the platform, I appreciate everything you guys do. I'd like to dial back just a little bit and take whatever the 3,000 or 5,000 foot view you guys keep talking about on immigration. So I don't necessarily want to comment on some of the specific incidences that we've all been talking about these last few weeks. But I think one of the things I like about you, Mark, is that you like to harp on the mainstream media. And I was a latecomer to one of your quotes that I really love is, I forget who was interviewing you, but you said the mainstream media used to have liberal bias, and now since the era of Trump, it's kind of become activism. And I think immigration is one of the big ones. So if I can just take a quick second to read one sentence from the Washington Post, which popped up in my feed a couple weeks ago. It says, historically, ICE officers have detained most immigrants inside prisons or jails after they have been charged with a crime or completed their sentences. There was no mention of sanctuary cities in this entire article. And the reason I paused on that sentence when I read it is I've actually done a little bit of homework, which I think everyone should do if we're going to have an honest discussion on immigration. And so I have an article here from Time from April 7th, 2014 that said most immigrants deported under Obama had thin or no criminal record. 2/3 of immigrants deported in the U.S. since 2008 committed minor traffic violations or had no criminal record at all, despite Obama's promise that his administration was targeting immigrants who were threats to the community. So if we've got the media putting information out, making people think that a lot of the immigration enforcement is unprecedented, and you had a guest on Friday that was talking from the Democratic side that mentioned the same thing. He mentioned that he thought, the reason it was different is that Obama was really only going after the criminals and he wasn't going into the community. So I'm not going to read you all my stuff here. I'm going to read a couple more headlines if I got a quick second. So here is December 4th, 2014 from the ACLU, titled "The Ones Obama Left Behind and Deported Without a Chance to be Heard." Each year, 363,000 or 83% of deportations from the United States are ordered by immigration officers, not judges. Those deported in summary removal processes do not get a hearing or a chance to present evidence or call a lawyer or even say goodbye to their families before they are banished, sometimes for life.
Adam,
There's a whole bunch of these.
I get the point, and with the possible exception of abortion, there's no issue on which my colleagues are more biased, I think, than immigration.
But it's not even biased though, Mark. Like
Yeah, no, I understand.
when you have the Washington Post out there telling people that this is how immigration has been done,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's
blatantly wrong.
Understood.
they're
That's why I say
lying,
by
and now we have people
it's
that may not be in the
it's
streets.
understood. Hold on, Em. It's ignorance and activism. Hogan, you have permission to unveil your inner Ari Fleischer and respond to Adam.
All right, Adam, it's a great point. I would argue that bias occurs in two ways: what you decide to cover and how you decide to cover it. And you see this in headline after headline, not telling the whole story, not unpacking exactly what's happening. You saw this with the child just recently, where they said they had arrested and detained a child, when in fact it was the deadbeat dad who ran off and left the child out in the freezing cold to die, for heaven's sakes. They didn't say that part of it. They just said the child was arrested, which was ridiculous.
Well, more than that, they said he was used as bait.
Yes, of course. Look, Obama deported a ton of folks. They call him the deporter in chief. Now, a lot of those numbers were turnaways at the border. They didn't actually come into the interior, so the removal process wasn't quite like it was. But I know that Homan made the point earlier that, hey, what is Trump's goal here? And I think it's been pretty clear. It's to remove people who are in this country illegally, that are a drain on our resources, who do not have the right to be here, who commit violent crimes or have been convicted of violent crimes in other countries. And the fact is, in so many of these states around the country, this to me is the bigger point. Why is this not happening in any other blue city, any other red state? It's because they are cooperating with law enforcement. And my last point, which is I think the weirdest of all, why does this keep happening in Minnesota, of all places? Why is this bubbling up of violence and craziness just in this one state? It seems quite odd for a whole host of reasons we could probably unpack at another time, another place. Yes. It's a little frustrating to me, but I think your point is right. The media continues to advocate for a side as opposed to telling the news to the American people, and that's the real problem with the media. That has been
Adam, thank you. Homan, do you think the press is biased on this issue?
Yeah, Adam, good to see you. And I just got a pop-up from my trip in San Diego exactly 2 years ago. So I'm jealous right now in this Arctic blast in DC. Look, what you're not going to do is see me defend the press. And I've been saying this since 2016. I've been doing communications my entire career, political communications, and I very rarely have been on the same side of the press. And I do think that they have a bias. I'm not saying it's a liberal bias. I don't know what their bias is. I think the press has their own bias on clicks and views and conversation and all that stuff. And so I'm not going to defend them. I think sometimes they don't go deep enough. They don't go wide enough. They're pretty lazy. More so than bias is them being lazy and not actually going the extra mile. I mean, Hogan and I, who worked in government, we're like, we sent you the talk, we sent you the facts. We sent you the FOIA request. But I think a lot of times these reporters and these journalists just don't go deep enough. They don't provide enough context, and it leaves too much for interpretation.
Amazing. Thank you for the question. Very, very much appreciate it. Mark, welcome, and tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind for Homan and for Hogan.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm lying on my bed. I'm from Sydney. It's about almost 2 a.m. and I need to wake up for work in 3 hours. So, just a very quick question. What else should happen in Minnesota to call it a rebellion? Because to me, it's all people facing the federal, no police, no local government. So this is like my simple question for you.
Yeah. Well, I think the governor and the president have agreed, and we saw some of it last night, that there's going to be more local law enforcement. We had a member of the community on last night from Chicago who said the reason this hasn't happened in Chicago, and Hogan, there are a bunch of reasons why it's happening in Minneapolis, but one is in Chicago, the police are showing up where they need to keep the peace because that's not what the ICE and Border Patrol are supposed to do. We do have, amongst the many problems in Minneapolis, is they have a very small police force, both per capita and in terms of absolute numbers. It's just too small. I live in a city that has the largest police force in the country by far, and I believe also the largest per capita, which given the population of New York City is quite something. Minneapolis just doesn't have that. Now there's state police, there's county. They could be doing more, and I believe they will. And I believe that's going to make a huge difference because you look at these two incidents that we've seen now where people have died. there's no local cops around, and there should be, even with the lack of coordination, there should be, and hopefully the mayor and the governor will now address that. Haima.
Yeah, but I've said this since Mark. We've been talking about this. There's something going on in Minnesota that I just can't quite put my finger on yet. That's why, when I argue this, I'm talking about the use of force. And to Hogan's point earlier about Barack Obama deporting and stopping at the border more people than any president in history. Well, the only thing that didn't happen is ICE officials and Homeland Security officials did not kill people on the street. It just was not the same sort of scenario. But I tell you this, you guys all the time. I've worked in city government a long time. It takes so long to recruit, train, and produce new cops. I remember we were in New Orleans, and Mitch Landrieu. If you guys don't know Mitch Landrieu, take a look at Mitch Landrieu, who's just a great Democrat, a great person who worked with the federal government to rebuild New Orleans, a person who actually asked the federal government to come into the city to help us get our jail under control and get the city of New Orleans under control. But here's the reality of those situations. When you go out and you recruit 250 people, you're going to get about 15 cops, maybe 10 cops out of that. And so what I'd like to see President Trump do in all of these cities is invest in the cops program, invest in local police are sort of the lifeline and backbone of these cities. And before they get to these huge levels of chaos like they are in Minneapolis right now, a lot of these local police, like they're doing in Chicago, San Francisco, which Mark, we talked about this, the city has, that has waned tremendously over the last decade. Daniel Laurie is working with the federal government, working with his local police force to bring that city back. And so I do think there's a way for us to do it. It has to be collaborative, it has to be a conversation. Hogan and I agree on the goal. We disagree on how to get there, but I think we're all on the same page. We want to have more local police. We want to have more safety in these cities, and we don't want to get to a point where our cities are like Minneapolis. These are great American cities that we don't want to see burned down.
Hogan.
Well, yeah, Mark, great point. Listen, as far as under Obama, we didn't kill people in the streets. Well, there weren't people in the streets, and they weren't protesting. They stopped them at the border for the most part. It was Biden who let them all in. But listen, this government in Minnesota, which is so odd, I would argue it's corrupt. I would argue it's ratcheted up the pressure here. Waltz himself said that the people of ICE, Border Protection, they're not law enforcement. He said our people are law enforcement. And remember, Waltz had no problem keeping American citizens on their porches during COVID by firing rubber bullets, flashbangs, and smoke bombs at American citizens to keep them inside. But for whatever reason here, he's like, nah, it's all good. Let's just go out there and protest from behind his pearly gates there at the governor's mansion, and then saying he's going to mobilize the National Guard against ICE. This is where I think the breakdown kind of begins to happen. Because as I mentioned, other states, this is happening flawlessly. In other cities, this is happening flawlessly because those municipalities and state governments are working with the federal government to enforce laws that are already on the books and, as I mentioned, have been signed into law by both Republican and Democrat administrations. It's this weird place that says, no, we're not doing that. So those clashes are inevitable. They are 100% preventable. These deaths, while tragic, are also 100% preventable, and they shouldn't happen. And as I mentioned, it's easy not to get arrested by the police, and it's easy not to get arrested by law enforcement of any kind, and it's easy not to get shot by law enforcement of any kind if you're not breaking the law, and that's where these problems come into play. The whole thing needs to be brought down because the administration needs to make sure that when they do talk to Waltz and the mayor, for example, of Minneapolis, they say, listen, here's the deal. We'll pull some people back, that's fine. But in return, what I want from you guys is following federal law and turning over these people who are child rapists and murderers and burglars and all these things, and we need to get them out of the country. If they work together in that way, theoretically, we get it all done, no problem.
I agree with Hogan in theory, but I think we're at the point now where if you look at these numbers, we've probably deported most of the violent criminals, and right now we're going after people who are not and who we just want to get them out of the country. Let's just be honest about it. If we want all people who have entered this country from other countries out of this country, let's just be honest about it, and let's just be forthright. If you did not come here illegally, we want you out, regardless of of your status as a criminal or not. And I think that's what the president is saying. And we should be honest about that. If that's the case, that's the case. The thing that I am concerned about right now is the level of training that these new officers on the ground have gotten. Like I mentioned a second ago, to go through police academy takes damn near a year, and it takes a lot to get there. To put these ICE officers, some through weeks of training, that's the reason why they can't intervene in some of these big instances is because they don't know how to. They're not trained to do that. And so I think if we give these individuals better training, give them more than just 6 weeks or 4 weeks or 2 weeks of training, then we can sort of get ahead of some of these killings and these shootings and just better prepare these individuals.
One quick point. You're right, Jaime. One quick point. Mark, hang on one second. You're right, Jaime. One quick point, though. The person who pulled the trigger in this instance was an 8-year vet. He'd been there 8 years already. So I understand the need for training, and I agree. We should have a lot of good training. These people should know what's happening. They should be put into situations and tested prior to going out on the streets. But this guy had been there for 8 years. I don't know what his training was before, but still, I mean, it's not just, I think you would agree, Jaime. I don't think there's just one thing that we can use to fix all this. It's a bunch of different things, a bunch of levers need to be pulled.
Mark, one more comment from you if you'd like.
I agree.
Yeah, I just I just feel, like the police are not getting engaged because they don't have the spine, because they know if they get if they injure one person, they know the city will get burned. They are not backed by the local government. So I see them very, very weak.
Yeah,
and,
it's a tough position, but the mayor, the governor, and the county of government have to deal with it. Mark, thank you. Tell your colleagues at work you're tired because you were on two-way. They'll totally get it. I will just say the administration doesn't want to have the debate that Jaime just raised. They don't want to say if they want everybody deported or not. They want to say worst of the worst and all that. And the president's friends in ag and hospitality don't want everybody deported because they'd go out of business. But many people in America do. Many people think everybody came here illegally. If there was a rational system, maybe you'd have a touchback provision. Maybe you'd have comprehensive immigration reform. If you came here illegally, go home, get in line, can come back. If you've got family here, maybe have a preferential treatment. But some people call that amnesty. So we're not having the real debate. But clearly, people are going to be deported under this administration who are not violent criminals. Some, not all of them, but clearly some of that's going to happen. And it would be great to have the debate rather than just having the administration get away with pretending that they're only deporting violent. That everybody should be deported?
No, they said we're going to start with the worst of the worst.
They do, but
70% now are convicted criminals, and then we're going to get the people out.
Understood, but the president has, and his spokespeople hedge on that question. They go back to, we're dealing with the worst of the worst, and then we'll see. Well, but what's their policy? Do they want to deport 20 million people or not?
I think it's pretty obvious they do. I'm not confused by it at all. I'm saying they're starting with
the worst. They don't say it. They don't say it.
Why are we parsing it? We want to do both. We said we want to do both and all of the above. That's what we should just say that.
Yeah. I think that's what people want. I think that's what they want to do. I think they've gone about trying to get this 70% out now, which is what they've been doing.
All right, keep your hands up. One more word from one more sponsor, then back to your questions. Ethos is an online platform that allows you to do what those of you who haven't done should do, which is get life insurance. If you're the main breadwinner in your family, don't leave your loved ones in a horrible position. If you do pass away and you don't have life insurance, they're going to have trouble paying the mortgage, paying rent, paying college tuition, and other major expenses. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. You can get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. And if you use our promo code ETHOS or go to ethos.com/Mark, you don't need a promo code, just add the /Mark. You'll get a free quote today in minutes. Ethos helps protect your family. Application times may vary, but this is relatively quick. It's not a complicated process. No health exam is required. You just answer a few health questions as part of the survey. You get a rate quote in as little as 10 minutes. As I said, protect your family with as much as $3 million in life insurance. Do it now. Go to ethos.com/Mark and fill out the form and get a quote for life insurance. Vitally important that you do it right now. Do it right now. Ethos.com/Mark. Thank you for your attention to that final matter. Here's Bob. Bob, tell everybody in that extraordinary radio voice you have where you are and what's on your mind.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment, my extraordinary radio voice. Hey, I just wanted to, I keep hearing this and I dug into it a little bit yesterday. So I'm just curious because, and Jaime just referenced it. And I think that anybody, whether, you support these actions in Minnesota or not, if you're a supporter of what ICE does, obviously you want trained agents doing the job. But I just wanted to dig into it a little bit because, as Hogan just said here a minute ago, based on my searching, the agent that shot Good had been on Border Patrol for something like 8 years and then was on ICE since 2015. And the agent in this most recent shooting was, on ICE for 8 years. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lack of training, but I keep hearing this come up, and I've seen it in a lot of comments that, there's these ICE thugs and they're barely trained, et cetera. I would also say that, they have 48 days. They switched to 6-day training weeks in order to expedite people, getting out there as agents. But then they're supposed to be under a period where they're under somebody for a year before they act solo. So I keep hearing this supposition that there's a lack of training. I see no evidence that that's a problem. So if there's some evidence that it is, that lack of training is creating these issues, can somebody provide me with some?
Well, just as a matter of fact, there are people out there, not necessarily in these two cases of the people who fired their weapons, but there are people out there who have lack of training. And Border Patrol has training in doing what they do, but their training is not intensive or extant at all on being in this kind of urban setting. They're trained to apprehend people on the border and how to deal with that. They're not trained to drive around Minneapolis in a city and deal with things like protesters, because that's not typically what Border Patrol does, as has been pointed out on this program and other elsewhere on Two-Way. There's too much conflating of Border Patrol and ICE. Border Patrol is not equipped to do what they're doing, even if they've been there for a decade. Hogan.
You just hit on it perfectly. They are not equipped to deal with protesters because they should not have to deal with protesters. If you're going to stand on the side and scream and blow your whistle,
Hogan, if you were the head of ICE and I was your senior advisor, I would say, boss, we're putting folks in a position where they are dealing with protesters because our boss, the president, didn't call the governor and the mayor and say we need local law enforcement to help. So you can blame local all you want, and there's plenty of blame to go around. But I wouldn't, if I worked at ICE, I wouldn't be going into this mission if there were protests, because there are protests and they're not equipped to handle it. So
if you want to set up a perimeter around a particular operation, as you know, these things are well calculated and coordinated because they're calling people and letting everyone know where the ICE people are, et cetera, and try to set off some type of perimeter and then go in there and do your work. That's one thing. But the fact is they are having to deal with protesters, and they shouldn't, because protesters should not impede law enforcement. That's the whole point of it, whether it's local police doing their job, which they haven't done, of course, or whether it's the governor saying, I'm going to buck the authority of the federal government here, and I'm going to try and keep rapists in my neighborhood. That's what he wants to do. That's fine. The problem is it puts lives in danger, as we have clearly seen, not just those they're trying to apprehend, not just ICE, but citizens of Minnesota.
100%. And I don't read the chat, but I glance at it, and people are correct. They're not protesters. They're interfering in they're in law enforcement activities. In this case, they're not protesters. They're not protesters. Haima, last word from you.
Well, I think it's two separate issues. I do think there are lawful protests that are happening that are getting conflated with some of these folk who are inciting. But we know this happens, and Hogan and I have seen this. We've been in politics for a long time. We've seen this happen for a long time, so this is not new. But I do want to say, and to Hogan's point earlier, look, I want to just start highlighting some individuals who's doing these things correctly. I've talked about her, a lot over the last couple of weeks. There's a new mayor in New Orleans, Helena Moreno, who's getting ready for Mardi Gras in 2 weeks, who just celebrated Sugar Bowl and New Year's Eve, and they've invited the National Guard and national forces come in to help protect them and help supplement what the local PD is doing. But New Orleans police have a long history of working really, really closely and really well with the federal government. And what Helena Moreno, the new mayor, is trying to prove is there is a way for collaboration with the federal government that does not allow for just violence on either side in the middle of a city. And so what we're going to see in New Orleans over the next couple of weeks is a huge level of collaboration with national and federal officials and local officials, and of course the governor, Jeff Landry, who has also been involved in this. And so there are going to be ways and examples of how to do this right. And I think New Orleans is going to be one of those.
Bob, thank you.
Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow on this program, we're unfortunately swapping out Haima. That's the bad news. But the good news, Kevin Walling will be here along with Hogan. So we'll see you at 9 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. Hogan and Kevin. Haima, grateful to you for coming back today. Hogan, grateful.
That clap was for Haima.
I understand. Grateful.
Hogan and I are actually friends outside of this. So
yes, grateful to have you on. Two more two-ways today. Two-way tonight. Again, remember, new time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Some of you love it, some of you hate it, but get used to it because the show's on at 5 Eastern now. Amongst those joining us will be Ricky Schlott, a columnist for the New York Post, who's always interesting. Moynihan Report at 7 o'clock tonight. And then, as I said, we'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern time, full coverage of everything that's gone on in Minnesota today. Homan's time on the ground and maybe some meetings with Democratic officials will be interesting. We'll track whether Secretary Noem appears on TV at all today. That'll be interesting. And, of course, the president's trip to Iowa. All full coverage of everything tonight, 5 Eastern time on Two-Way Tonight. Hogan and Kevin tomorrow. Grateful to Haima, to Hogan, to all of you for being part of the Two-Way experience. And next up, coming up, Michael, who are my guests on next up? Michael, maybe Michael dropped off. Anyway, you'll be surprised. I've got great guests on next up. You'll see who they are. Thank you for joining. Have a good day, everybody. I'll see you on next up, and I'll see you at 5 Eastern right here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.